The film opens with the introduction of a news reporter and a scientist named Marshall. While interviewing Marshall, the reporter learns that there is only one option for the planet. That is time travel, and the reporter begins to giggle after hearing this, because Marshall has spent $500 million from the government. Please like, subscribe, and press the bell icon on all. After all of this, Marshall says he hasn't gained anything. He holds up a book and declares that all of the research is included in it. He was also promoting it. The reporter tells Marshall that many eminent scientists are making fun of him. The reporter departs later. The news reporter is constantly disparaging Marshall. Marshall returns and starts to attack the reporter. The reporter splatters spray on his mouth, and this is all happening live. Marshall loses his job. 3 years later, we see him again. This time, he has developed a time travel element named tachyon, which could be manufactured into a tachymeter device. We can see that the audience is young children. After that incident, he became a science teacher from the scientist. Marshall was about to leave after that when Holly intervened. She gives him a stone that she claims she found in the desert. This artifact was 30,000 years old and still had the mark of the lighter on it. After holding the stone for some time, Marshall's lighter fixes on it. She also discovered a crystal in the area that causes an outburst of pure energy. Later, Holly appears to meet Marshall again. Marshall wants to develop a tachyon meter after hearing from Holly once more. He has built the tachyon meter after waking up all night. Is it effective? They go back to the desert to find out more. They arrive at a place where the crystal was discovered by Holly. There was nothing else there but a shop, and a man named Will was there. Marshall tells Will that there is a secret cave nearby and that we must go there. While all of this is going on, Will's friend shows up and he asks him to take care of the shop. Meanwhile, I'll take this traveler to see the hidden cave. They enter the cave, where Marshall has a tachyon meter device and Holly has a tachyon energy meter. They have to use the boat because there is a lot of water in the cave. Will describes the cave to them while driving, telling them that it's extremely dangerous and that there are aliens that resemble lizards there. When they enter the cave, they find an alien, which turned out to be Will's trap, and Marshall's tachyon meter begins to bleep. Then he turns his meter, and a massive earthquake occurs there. The earthquake causes their boat to fall into a deep hole. When Marshall opens his eyes, he discovers that he is in the middle of a desert. Holly discovers a huge ship when she opens the door. When the day came, there were 3 moons visible in the sky. They'd entered a new realm. There are 3 monkey guys there that look like both monkeys and men. A pair of primates were attempting to murder their 3rd fellow primates. Will, Marshall, and Holly began yelling as they saw this. He leaves the monkey men, but they begin to move toward them. Will boldly try to scare them by setting the lighter on fire. In contrast, Will's hand burns. The pair of monkeys steal his lighter and run off. The 3rd monkey looks at them and then hides. When the 3 of them get close to them, Holly puts her palm on her chest and introduces herself as Holly. He also says his name is Chaka and says he likes Holly. Marshall notices wounds to his feet. Marshall throws sand in his eyes and wipes them in an attempt to heal his wounds. A huge hole has been constructed in the desert. 3 of them had fallen into a skeleton-filled cave. Chaka runs away from Will and Marshall and hides next to Holly, telling him he's our commander, Holly. Then he goes up to Marshall. The tree roots extend to their feet at this period and suspend them in midair. They understand that by putting humans in such a restricted space, the trees are consuming them. To stay alive, they begin to swing by holding onto each other's hands. Meanwhile, a large dinosaur burrows inside the cave. The dinosaur makes cuts in the tree's roots rather than biting them. The Marshalls all drop to the ground and run away when the root breaks. Holly thinks that when she gets back to Earth, she will tell everything. She starts shooting because of this, but the dinosaur is pursuing them. They start to run away from there. Chaka left the opposite side of the bridge behind after arriving there. 3 of them shout and dash across the bridge to reach there in the meantime. There was no way for dinosaurs to cross the bridge and reach the other side. After that, the dinosaur gives up. Marshall, meanwhile, asserts that a dinosaur's brain is like a wallet. As Marshall approaches, the dinosaur hears him coming and rushes over. When they realize this, they are all afraid and start to walk away. They reach a cave by way of a bridge. Into the cave. They think that if they go, the dinosaur will attack and destroy us because it is unable to enlarge, and gives Marshall a glare as she leaves. They hear the radio in the interim and notice something within. Chaka found the skeletons of the previous owners when he turned on the radio. They choose to stay the night there in spite of their fear. Chaka is told by Marshall that although the rest of us will sleep inside, he will sleep outside, which says says that Chaka would sleep with us too as he develops fond of her. Holly speaks to Chaka in his mother tongue. Here, we find out that Chaka is the monarch of their realm. For this reason, his two allies want to kill him so they may rule his kingdom. Will goes to the entrance of the cave to close it with a big box. Marshall says there's no reason to be afraid of the dinosaur, since his mind is as little as a walnut. When Marshall mentions this, a loud noise comes from that direction. They all see a big walnut when they turn to face outside. The dinosaur was observing them from a distance. The following day, Marshall begins filming. Just as the camera's battery is about to die, the lunch was also finished, and Marshall says in his audio that they would be eating Chaka when the meal is finished. Later, when everyone has returned inside, Chaka offers them fruit to eat. Marshall begins eating a banana since he feels bad about what he said. In the meantime, he is being bitten by the poisonous ants that have come out of the fruit. They become aware of a strange light emanating from the bush at this period. Marshall believes that the alien is calling him. In the meantime, Marshall gets to his feet and runs to help the extraterrestrial. Will tells Holly that he's definitely lost his mind since coming here. I'll go clear his head now. He stops wandering in the middle of the forest despite everyone's attempts to stop him. There was a crystal in the shape of a bromate. Will and Marshall are going to have a look at it. Chaka, meanwhile, brings up the nearby frog-like statues. Chaka makes an effort to speak to them in his native tongue. Aliens surround them when they arrive in the interim. The aliens' bodies resembled lizards, and they had eyes like frogs. Holly twists her belt just as they are about to say goodbye for good. This causes Marshall's belt buckle to revolve, letting sunlight beam on the sculptures. Consequently, the entrance of the crystal opens, permitting their entry. Since they couldn't get there, the aliens have moved on to another dimension. An animal that resembled a lizard approached Marshall and asked for help. He touched the crystal. A hologram and another extraterrestrial appear in the interim. They are told by this alien that they are the ones that want to rule the Earth. He desires total control over everything. When I attempted to stop him, he abducted me. Your world is this alien's next target. Marshall tells him that he will be saved and that he now has the chance to save the planet as well as himself. Meanwhile, as soon as he touches the crystal, everything starts to tremble. The alien says there are multiple gateways that will open here if these stones are lost. That means a lot of aliens will come in. To save the aliens, they will require the tachyon meter. To obtain it, they have come out. Marshall wants us to get away from the dinosaur before trying to save ourselves. Marshall shows them a yellow liquid inside a cane. He claims that since it is dinosaur feces, the dinosaur won't notice us if we consume it or scatter it around. The liquid, which he splatters all over himself, ought to be in our circulation. He takes a sip of it while he speaks. After 5 minutes, Marshall feels his nose getting blocked and his eyes burning. In the meanwhile, he says this tactic also fell flat. Screaming, Chaka calls them to her and leads them to a new place. There, objects have dropped from the sky. Little dinosaurs were running around. An ice cream car crashes into the ground in the interim. Unexpectedly, dinosaurs appeared and attacked the ice cream truck. The ice cream salesman throws ice cream in their faces. They are able to separate the head of a giant dinosaur that appears in the meantime, who is pursuing them, and a female dragon is also present. Marshall notes that during the conflict between the two dinosaurs, none of them seem to be looking in any direction. The dinosaurs rapidly chase them once Marshall says this. Marshall dodges dinosaurs by running in a zigzag fashion. In the meantime, the dinosaur grabs hold of him and moves him aside with a single blow. The female dragon is also pursuing Marshall. The dragon is aware that he is hiding in a car since he does the same. There, she ascends, but Marshall escapes. He reaches for a neighboring nitrogen cylinder after noticing it. He gives his friends instructions to keep the old stone-throwing device ready. Marshall secures the cylinder in place, and this machine is highly calibrated. The cylinder is barely thrown and ends up in the dinosaur's mouth. The female dragon falls there after freezing. In the meantime, the bodies of the dinosaurs break apart in an instant. Meanwhile, the tachyometer begins to beep. They see that the device is situated in the dinosaur's midsection. Before they can act further, a flying dinosaur comes and takes off with the equipment. Holly advises Marshall, who is tired, to locate the tachyometer as he sits in the car. Marshall argues that I won't be able to win again because I've lost before. We ought to give it a shot. I had placed my trust in your book, even if everyone else was making fun of you. Consequently, I was expelled from the university. Now now, I think it's accurate to assume that you're a comic instead of a scientist. Under a tree, they spend the night, and Chaka tells Will about his realm. Chaka said that the females of our realm have good dispositions. They also provided for our basic needs. As Chaka was saying, Marshall enters and begins to play an instrument. Holly is greeted by Marshall, who says, "You've opened my eyes. I have changed into a new Marshall. I am no longer the older Marshall. Tomorrow, we'll go find the tachyon meter." He sits down after saying this, and a mosquito bites his neck. While the insect was sucking away at his blood, he was singing. But Marshall felt weak and worn out. He collapses to the ground, wondering why he is experiencing this. As he collapses in thought, we observe a massive locust perched on his back, and he passed out while drinking his blood. Once beneath him, the locust perishes. After that, everyone sleeps there, and Marshall has a nice red back. He addresses the entire gathering with a motivational speech. "We'll head to locate the tachyon meter," he says. Despite the fact that he was the last person on the hill, and the others were ahead of him, Marshall then delivers a motivational speech. When they ascended inverted, it was the volcano's peak. Both the tachyon meter and the dinosaur's nest were gifts. There were a lot of dinosaur eggs. The dinosaur will hatch from its eggs if there is even the slightest noise. Will pretends to be sleeping in the room when Marshall tells him. Later, Marshall makes the decision to go there by himself and takes off his shirt. In his undershirt, he knots something. He steps forward and puts on the tachyon meter. In the meantime, the eggs start to break and the song of the tachyon meter ceases. Their melody seemed to be tachyon meter music. That's why they were fast asleep. The tiny dinosaurs returned to slumber later. They were all drinking when they went swimming in the pool. They used the tachyon meter while having fun in the water. They think they'll be able to go back to their planet, and Chaka gives them a strange fruit as a prize. They ingest the fruit's water, thinking it to be coconut. It is not an ordinary fruit, but rather a dangerous one. According to Chaka, they were all drinking when they went swimming in the pool. There is tachyon energy in the vicinity, according to the tachyon meter that Holly activates. Holly chooses to do it alone and doesn't get in touch with Marshall or Will. She moves and discovers a crystal door, which she opens to discover a cave. However, they were also feeling hungry and enjoying themselves. They see someone coming from a distance. In reality, it was a gigantic crab that was about to eat them. Suddenly, there is a fissure in the soil, and the crab creeps in. A spray of hot water appeared from the ground. When the crab is cooked, they start to consume it. After giving Chaka a kiss, Marshall remarks, "I've always thought you were wrong." In contrast, Holly has entered a cave. She chooses to take one of the many dinosaur eggs that she finds. A hologram of the extraterrestrial materialized in the interim. The alien continues, "If anyone is watching me, please pay great attention to what I'm saying. By accusing me of being wrong, the alien is confining me. In reality, he is extraterrestrial and desires to settle on Earth." The second alien who was narrating is shown to us in the interim. He is eliminated by a laser beam. Holly found his lifeless body there. As he attempted to leave the cave, lizard-like aliens caught him. As Will and Marshall's senses return, they start looking for Holly. Holly is first seen by them when they enter the cave. They notice the aliens, who resemble lizards, occupied with one another. They eventually discard their skin, and they both seize the chance that this presents. Holly, on the other hand, was hung over the lava while they wore that skin. She is surrounded on all sides by alien invaders. They said she made an effort to help the evil extraterrestrial. That's the reason she needs to kill her. When Will and Marshall discover this, they rip off their skin and argue that we ought to be held accountable for helping the alien if doing so was illegal. They are told by the aliens that a malevolent alien species is trying to conquer the world. He aspires to rule over humanity. They both turn to confront the aliens now, tossing each one into the lava one by one. To save Holly, Marshall jumps into her cage, but just as the cage was about to topple, they leaped for safety. The cage plunges into molten rock. Holly tells Marshall that we've helped the bad alien. Marshall sent Chaka to that wicked alien, which was a mistake. He's called on his men for support. The tachyon meter was held by the malevolent extraterrestrial who had come with his friends. He shows Earth in that hologram and states, "My comrades are experts at making children." The malevolent alien declares, "I will destroy humanity like you while sending my aliens to Earth." and in the meantime, the dinosaur shows up. Marshall tells me they're here to kidnap me. Holly and Will are told to take it from there by him. I don't love you, he tells Holly before hurling a stone at her. Will later leave from there as well, holding a wooden path in his hand. Will stepped before the dinosaur. Unable to stay seated on the dinosaur, Marshall jumps off the rod. Rather, he opens his mouth to enter. Having been watching the entire affair, Holly lets out a furious scream. I've fallen in love with a human, and you've eaten him, she cries as she begins to throw stones at him. The dinosaur then leaves, and Holly decides to travel the world and gather the tachyon meter so she can tell everyone about Marshall's achievements. Holly begins to end aliens by spinning her belt, and although she ends a few, a swarm of them soon encircles her. Meanwhile, Will is being held captive by the aliens, and we see a large dinosaur nearby, which Marshall is riding. The dinosaur advances while ending all aliens, and Marshall lowers himself from his tail. When his allies ask him how long he's been alive since the dinosaur ate him, Marshall responds that the first step is to learn how to use the tachyon meter. With that, they enter the wicked alien's dimension. The wicked alien opens the Earth portal, and Marshall and the alien engage in combat. Will tries to join the fight, but Marshall pushes Will away. He crashes into the ground, and a crystal shifts from its place due to his vibrations. The Earth's gateway gradually opens, and Marshall takes Holly's locket out of her pocket. The Earth's door was about to close, but they have to leave before it could. The evil alien was holding Will's feet. Will says to Marshall, "Wouldn't you take your friend?" and makes a U-turn to grab the alien. He tells Marshall to leave because he is going to see this alien. He says, "I've decided to make this my home. Everything Shaka told me about his kingdom was positive. I don't want to sit in that idol shop again." Marshall and Holly leave that path and head straight for the cave. Will's friend asks him where they've arrived. They tell him he's gone to a better place. Meanwhile, Marshall, who gained notoriety after learning he could travel through time, reappears in the same TV interview from the beginning of the movie. He suggests the reporter read this book, and when he sees the title, he gets enraged and attacks Marshall. The movie story ends here in a funny way.